So we're going to have a little different thing this morning. Not that I'm the same every week anyway, as I can attest to. So we've been studying end time prophecy from Genesis all the way through Malachi, and maybe I've missed one or two in there, but it's opened our eyes to a lot of things. And the reason we were doing that is when in chapter 24 of Matthew, which we're going to start looking at today, when the apostles started questioning Christ about what are the signs of the end, when is it coming back, when will these things happen, they already knew all this Old Testament prophecy. So they saw him as the Messiah. And I want to start with what would probably be, I'm sure I've taught this either at Easter or Palm Sunday, and I'm not going to teach a whole lesson, but I brought something really cool today. We talked about how Jesus was up with Lazarus's family and raised him from the dead, and the mourners that were there saw that and went back to Jerusalem. Now, this is a horrible map, but up in here is Bethel, which is where Lazarus was, and you would come down this road through the Garden of Gethsemane and down into Jerusalem, and Christ would have, I'll have to see whether, I don't think they even have this on here. In any case, Christ would have come down that road, and then that's the Palm Sunday that we all are familiar with, people throwing their cloaks and throwing the palm and so on. And they'd gotten the whole city of Jerusalem excited about it at the same time. So he comes in, let me stand on this side over here. I know you can't read most of it. It's a cool, this is a teaching aid, and if you're teaching a class on the week of Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday, there's handouts on the back. You can run through a copier and hand out to the class while you're doing it. But the disciples this is the week the disciples are there, and they're going to ask Christ this question, or these questions. You can see here on, of course, Friday was up in Bethany, Bethany. Saturday was, that's Palm Sunday. That's when they came into town. Monday is when he cleaned up the temple. He got you've turned my house into a den of thieves and all of that. And of course, the disciples are with him through all this. On Tuesday, he speaks in parables for the Mount of Olives. On Wednesday, there's a day of rest. Then you have the Passover, fiction, death, resurrection, and so on. Well, right here on Tuesday is some people call it the Olivet Discourse. And it's when he's coming by the temple. They're at the temple. So I have this other thing here. Now, it's a little hard to envision. This is a cutout of Solomon's temple. And Herod had taken Solomon's temple and expanded it greatly and just way over the top with everything, nothing that God had told him to do. But what I like about this one of Solomon, it shows you a few things. One, it's solid gold inside, and just absolute solid. The ceilings, the walls, the floors, the Ark, the Covenant, all of it. And it sits on, again, I'm horrible at drawing things, as the class knows. They had to build, because they, I'm going to be in everybody's way. They had to build huge retaining wall, the top of the mountain. I've drawn that before. And these stones are the size of this room, each individual stone. Some of them maybe even bigger than that. And then on top of it is where the temple that you see here got built. It sets on it. There's a floor here, and then there's this big retaining wall that's keeping everything level so they can have that. And they're walking by the temple on their way out and on their way up to the Garden of the Gods, where they were sort of camped. It's where he spent the week. And while they're walking along there, we're going to read in Matthew 24, Christ starts telling them things. They're believing he's the Messiah, which he is, but the Jewish version of the Messiah. And they think he's going to set up his government, and all the things that we saw in the Old Testament prophecies about Israel, Jerusalem, Judea are all going to start to happen. And that's when they ask him, when will these things happen? And that's what we're going to look at this morning. Bring this back over here. So we're in Matthew chapter 24. And I would imagine most folks who've been in any Sunday school class before have studied this a fair amount and are absolutely going to be floored with what Wes came up with for this class today. Put this over here. There we go. Thanks to Karen for this wonderful idea. So we're going to start in 24, and we're just going to have some fun today. See what the Lord tells us and shows us and so on. So Matthew 24, Jesus left the temple, that's what I was showing you a minute ago, and was walking away when his disciples came up to him to call his attention to these buildings. Do you see all these things, he asked. Truly, I tell you, not one stone here. And again, now we're talking stones the size of this classroom. I should have brought pictures in. You guys, I think, have seen with me with my hand on one of the fallen stones. They're huge. Not one stone here will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down. So we'll jump ahead for a second. And I know Bill and Karen know this, I believe. Did that actually happen? You're allowed to say. Did it happen? You don't know? No? Yes? Because the story behind how it fell, I think, is really cool. You saw all that gold on the temple? Josephus, I think, wrote about it. Who knows who else? When the Romans finally captured the city in 70 AD, Titus, I think, was the general. Is that right? Yeah. It was at the end of a 2-year siege, and it was awful. They slaughtered everybody in the city. I mean, it was a mess. And the army came in, and of course, when you fight in an army in those days, you fought the little bit of pay you got, but you really fought for what you could haul off. And they see all this gold. How do you scrape it off? How do you get it off? You set the building on fire. And they tried to burn everything they could from the floor up on the whole thing. The gold melted down between the stones like it would where the stones come together. So what do you think they did? They knocked every stone over so they could scrape the gold off. And some of those stones that they knocked over are still in a pile at the base of what's called the Wailing Wall. This would be the western, am I right? Yeah. Wailing Wall. Over on, so the part you see on TV is this section. Over here is a big, huge pile of these giant stones that they would have knocked over 70 AD. It was incredible. So he says, truly, not one stone here will be left on another. Everyone will be thrown down. As Jesus was sitting, so we jump right, so they're the Temple Mount. And again, if I get to take the group over, you'll have a better understanding of this. They've now gone a good hour's walk up to the top of Mount of Olives, again, where they were camped. So he gives them this comment as he's walking by there. Well, boy, this guy must be the Messiah. Where's his army? When are we going to overthrow the government? So on. And they're just walking on up the mountain. You know, there was a lot more conversation, didn't get put in here. But now we're up at the Mount of Olives where they're sort of camped for the week. And the disciples came to him privately. So there's nobody else around, in other words. Tell us, they said, when will this happen? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Now that's 3 questions. He only answers 2. He doesn't tell them when the stones will get knocked down, which will happen in 70 AD. What will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? And that's what I wrote up here. Typically, there are 5 signs that people point to that indicate Christ is coming again. So Jesus answered, watch out that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, claiming I am the Messiah, and will deceive many. So this would be one sign. And we could point to all kinds of whacked out people right now Waco was coming to mind. Jonestown, I think. Well, there's always somebody, I'm Christ, and a whole bunch of people believe it and go follow after him. But when
Next one is a guy in Russia.
Oh, what's that one about?
He just got out of prison, and he's got a few dozen followers. Yeah, he claims he's the Messiah.
He's the Messiah. Wow.
Has the long hair to fit the image too.
Yeah, probably doesn't look Jewish.
No,
that's,
it's Russian.
that's what I get. Every movie, I can't even, I don't know about Passion of the Christ. I don't think Passion of the Christ. The guy that plays Christ isn't Jewish, and you can tell it as soon as you see him. Live over there for a little bit, and you'll recognize a Jewish guy in a heartbeat, you know? Oy vey. Yeah, so the first sign that gets mentioned is that there's going to be these false messiahs. When we really get in and understand what's going on during that time, these are going to be real Messiah-like people. And the country is going to be looking for an answer. Right now, it's not. I mean, there's all kinds of fads around, but generally we think Trump's got the answer, so we're okay for now. The world's going to be in such turmoil then that there won't be any of that. And they're looking for something to cling to or something to hold in. There's going to be all these messiahs coming around promising, look, here's the Bible, I can show you where I'm at. And it says they'll do signs to even deceive the elect. Not these crackpot Waco guys or this Russian fellow or so on. So that's the first sign. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. And this is an important one for us, not for the reason you might think. Because he goes on to say, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. When, you know, take whatever thing you want. 9/11, October 7th, the massacre of the 270, whatever it was, that got massacred brutally. Hitler, World War II. Those are, they're more an indication of the world's broke. Just because there's a war doesn't mean Christ is coming back the next day. And the mainstream churches on the Sunday following October the 7th, I've got friends that go to a big one back in Virginia. The mainstream church pastors were standing up. This is the beginning of the tribulation period. 7 years from now, Christ is coming back, and they were all celebrating it and everything. The thing that got me the most is the number of churches that were celebrating the attack. Awful, because this is it. Our troubles are over. The clock's ticking. Rapture is day after tomorrow. Get ready. Foolishness. Just because he says all these are the beginning of birth pains. Well, we've been in birth pains since the day Christ got crucified, and we'll continue to see that. He's telling them these are signs, but then he's saying all these things are the beginning. Now, watch first now. So there are 5 things in there that most people will hold up as the sign: the famines, the earthquakes, the wars, the pestilence, the false messiahs. Verse 9. Then you will be handed over. Now we're going to start underlining you, or at least, the tablets, you can't do that. You will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. Who's the you? Who's the you?
Wasn't he originally telling this to the Jews?
Yeah, well, he was telling it to his disciples who aren't Jewish. Yeah. Now, so all this stuff that happened before, they're the beginning of birth pains, then you will be handed over. So those disciples are going to be like 4,000 years old, or 300, or, pick whatever. Today they'd be 2,000 years old before they're getting handed over. So it's probably not the disciples. He's talking to Jewish people, but he's not talking to the Jews, and we're going to see that in a second. You will be hated by all nations because of me. A lot of people see that as the Jews. No. The you here are followers of Christ. This is all about the followers of Christ, and you'll see in a second. At that time, this is now when the real end is near. At that time, many will turn away from the faith, see, He's talking to people of faith. That's the you before that. At that time, many will turn away from the faith and will betray and hate each other. And many false prophets will appear and deceive many people because of the increase of wickedness. The love of most will grow cold, but the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. And we're going to study this quite a bit this morning. But the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. Well, there's a lot in there. Oh my goodness. First of all, the one who stands firm to the end. So all of these, the you, the one, it's all about followers of Christ, those who put their faith in Christ. But the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. Stands firm. Bible verse come to mind right away? Ephesians chapter 6. Feet shod in the gospel of Christ so that we can stand firm against the schemes of the devil and so on. When you tell somebody to stand firm, or when Christ tells us to stand firm, what's he talking about? Is he talking about us don't move when they're coming to get you, just stand there? What's he mean, stand firm?
Be strong in your faith.
Yeah. Uncompromising. Particularly at the end of this 7-year period where compromise, they're not even going to know what the gospel is anymore. The church will have, well, no, I'll get way down. We'll get to the 7 letters. But stand firm. You need to know God's word and then hold on to it and stand firm, because there's all these false prophets popping up all over, false messiahs popping up all over the place. You better know your scripture, unlike Eve, right? Because Satan's going to come around and twist this word or twist that word, and oh, that's right, it could be that too, and those kinds of things. We can't be easily misled. And that's what he's saying here. Then he says, so the ones who stand firm to the end will be saved. I thought all I had to do was have faith in Christ and I'd be saved. I have an interesting chat now for a minute. What's going to happen in the end is you're going to be, every follower of Christ, every follower is going to be asked, if you're really a follower of Christ, you're going to suffer persecution. You're going to suffer death. You're not going to swerve away from it. Just like it was when? The beginning, right after Christ was crucified. Everyone who confessed to being Christ had to go hide because they were killing them. I mean, the Romans were just brutally killing them. And if they didn't swerve, if they stood firm, you were going to probably die or at least go to prison or suffer torture or whatever. That's the kind of walk, the kind of faith you're going to have in the end. We talked about it. We lived in this period of grace right now. That's going to end when the tribulation period starts. And the gospel that's going to be preached then is stand firm in your faith. And it's going to be the gospel like it is now. In fact, a lot of us forget gospel means good news. Good news. You're going to get slaughtered by the enemy because you're going to put your faith in Christ. Good news. But it will be good news because during that period, they're going to have nothing to hang on. Nobody knows what the truth is anymore. The truth is what anybody wants to make it. And when you're lost and trying to find something to hold on to in a storm, the rock, something to anchor to, they're going to get tossed around. We'll see. We get in Revelation, all these symbols and things. It is good news. Here's the good news. He really is the Messiah. He's coming back, and he's coming back now, and here's the proof. And you're going to have to stand firm in your faith and not only stand firm, tell everybody else about it. It's going to be, so there's kind of, it's not necessarily a second gospel message, but the gospel that's getting preached then is different than today. We can accept Christ, walk down the aisle, accept Christ. You don't expect to get arrested when you walk out the front door of the church because that's what you just did. That's the kind of life they're going to be living then. It's going to be a totally different not gospel, but environment. Now, what is the signs? So there are some signs. I know Christ gave us those, but he also gives us some others of the second coming. And we look at Paul's writing, we'll talk about an apostasy breaks out in the church. And I've said before, if you want to keep your eye on anything, keep your eye on Israel and keep your eye on the church. Those are where you're going to see the signs coming, and we're going to see some more of that today. So we're going to turn over, and I have it printed out here. We're going to start with Daniel 11. I have that in here. Come on, where is it? There we go. We're going to go Daniel 11, 31, 33. And we studied all of this when we went through Daniel, but just as a reminder. It says his armed force, now we're talking about the Antichrist coming down, the battle that was going on up and down the Mediterranean coast, and now he's headed down towards Egypt, but he's going to go through Israel. His armed forces will rise up to desecrate the temple fortress and will abolish the daily sacrifice. Wait a minute. What daily sacrifice? What can we infer from just that verse?
There's going to be another temple with its.
It's going to be, that's
system.
correct, yeah. And there's a group in Israel, you can read about them online, dedicated to being able to correctly rebuild the temple, Solomon's temple. And they've even got records about who the Levitical priests are and the ancestors and so on. And we'll get into Revelation. We'll see more about a peace that the Jews form with the Antichrist nation, and the temple gets rebuilt, and they begin sacrificial worship again. So, verse 31, they come back. Now they come back down, and this is mid-trib. 3.5 years in, he comes back through and changes his mind. They just says abolish the daily sacrifice. They desecrate the temple fortress. Then they will set up the abomination that causes desolation. With flattery, he will corrupt those who have violated the covenant. But the people who know their God will firmly resist him. And this is when things begin. The second half of the tribulation is bad. The last 6 months is called the Great Tribulation period. Gets even worse. Those who are wise will instruct many, though for a time they will fall by the sword or be burned, captured, or plundered. This is going to be a totally different time for outreach and door knocking and all the things we tend to think of today is going out and witnessing for Christ, talking to your neighbor in the parking lot of the supermarket and all that. This is going to be brutal, and most will die, and we'll get to that in just a second. And then we want to hop down to Daniel 12, just the 3 verses there. Daniel 12, 2-4, multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. And these are going to be the martyrs for sure during this period. But you, Daniel, roll up and seal the words of the scroll until the time of the end. Many will go here and there to increase knowledge. Of course, we see that today. Then you drop down to verse 11. From the time that the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination that causes desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days, which this class knows full well is 3.5 years. So we're going to go back to what we're going to read. This witness. So now, and this is in Daniel. These guys would have known that or should have known it. They probably did. They're at when it's all that's going to happen. So now we're back in Matthew 24, verse 15. So when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of through the prophet Daniel, see, they knew. Let the reader understand. That's the sign That's the one you want to watch. That's the big one right there. Then those who are in Judea, which is the area that surrounds Jerusalem there, flee to them, or those who are in Judea, flee to the mountains. Let no one on a housetop go down to take anything out of the house. You're on your roof fixing your roof, and over where the temple is, there's a big celebration because the Antichrist, he won't be called that, but the Antichrist is setting up this abomination that will cause desolation in the temple. Of course, they won't know that's an abomination, what he's setting up. But the second that thing is up there, you better get out of town. And that's what this is referring to. Get out and get out right now, because within a few days, they'll be killing everybody, anyone that has any, either a Jew or Gentile that's associated with Christ, they're going to kill. In those days, so let no one take anything out of the house. Let no one in the field go back to their cloak. How dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Why? Why would it be dreadful for nursing mothers and pregnant women? You ever tried to run with a baby in your hand and all your stuff on your back? You watch these people go out of Gaza. Look at all them streaming out of Gaza. Pregnant women, I've never been pregnant myself. I think we have an expert here. You're not as mobile. I mean, first of all. And second of all, if you already have the baby, you've also got to get all the things you need for the baby along with you and so on. So it would be very hard. Let no down to take anything out of the house. Cloak, how dreadful it would be for pregnant women and nursing mothers. Pray that your flight will not take place in winter or on the Sabbath. What? No winter travel, no Sabbath. Why winter?
You'd have more coats and everything.
Possibly snow.
Yeah, you're also going to have to plow through snow that could be up to here, depending on where you live in the mountain range there. Yeah, awful. And have you ever seen any of these where people are trying to evacuate an area because of a bad storm? And suddenly you're just parked on the road because everybody's trying to evacuate the area because of a bad storm. Awful. And you'll have that then. I mean, motorized, one thing, if you got to get your mule out and pack your mule, everybody will be jumping in their RV or whatever. Who knows, you know? And wait a minute. It says, pray that your flight will not take place on the Sabbath. Why?
Law says on the Sabbath you can only travel a certain distance.
Yeah, which they've extended, interestingly enough, as the city has gotten bigger. You know what the original distance was? And I can't remember if it's in Leviticus or if it's in one of the Jewish commentary things. The original distance was the distance they had calculated. Here, let me do it this way. As you can tell, I like to draw. This is pretty close right here. Actually, we'll take that off for a second. So now we're going to move our little square over here. And this is the tabernacle. The tent, I have a neat picture of that one. This is the tabernacle. What would this represent then? They're in the wilderness. That's the tabernacle. So I'm going to just do this here. Let's see, about there, and about there. And now what I have, and it's not going to be symmetrical, but I'm going to have 12 tribes camped by clan, family number, you know, all of those things. The distance they were allowed to walk on the Sabbath was from the very back of the camp to the front. No, that didn't work too well, did it? To the front of the tabernacle. That was the distance. Today, I think it's 6 miles or some. I don't know. They may even have a special rule now because first of all, there's no temple, but they're limited on how much they can travel. But the limit is much bigger than it used to be, just because of motorized vehicles and the spread of the city and all of that. I got to get a drink real quick here. But that's what Christ was talking about, and you're exactly right. They're limited. Now, I'm a follower of Christ, not a Jew, or I'm a Jew who's a follower of Christ, but there are Jews around me who are not followers of Christ. Suppose they go out the distance, I'm allowed to go and blockade the road. Because and it has nothing to do with the Antichrist. Some of these Jews are so fanatical, I think they would do that. You can't do that. I know you're leaving to go see your Aunt Mabel down in the Dead Sea or something. No. And if there's a whole mass of them trying to get out of town, can you see some blockade being put up? It's the Sabbath, you can't travel. Jewish cops, I mean, whatever it is. Jesus knew, we don't. But he said, pray that it's not Sabbath. And so what's the worst case here? What is the worst case? And you're pregnant with a 1-year-old. Horrible. Nick and Carly, what a mess. Yeah, so awful. For there will be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world. What is going to happen when that image or statue, it's going to come to life and do all kinds of things later. We won't see that here. But when that thing gets erected, they've desecrated the temple. They've knocked out a lot of things in the temple to put that thing in there. The world's just going to go straight downhill. Just absolutely straight nosedive in a way that's never been seen from the beginning of the world. That includes Noah's flood and everything. I mean, you think of all the bad things that have happened to the earth and people since what we know of as the creation of the world. This is going to be worse than any of that. It's going to be just horrible. So in verse 22, he then says, if those days had not been cut short, no one would survive. No one. For the sake of the elect, now we have the elect. For the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. At that time, if anyone says to you, look, here is the Messiah, or there he is, do not believe it. And again, we have the you underlined in mine, the you underlined. If anyone says to you, there's the Messiah. So now, you formed, what they did, after Christ, when they were getting persecuted right after the Christ's resurrection. They formed little groups, families, churches, whatever you want to call it. Of people. They formed these groups of people they could trust and were fellow believers. But Christ tells us, wolf in sheep's clothing, just because you have a group of fellow believers, they're not necessarily believers. You have to be careful. And what's going to happen here? You're going to have folks who are with you, but then they see what's going on out there and go, oh, he is the real Messiah. And they're going to start trying to tell the others, look, he's the Messiah. No, there's a Messiah. And Christ is saying, if they do, don't believe it. And how do they know it's not the Messiah? How are we going to know the real one? He'll be wearing a cross when he comes. No. Yeah, how are we going to know the real one? Well, Jesus tells you. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders. This is going to be a time, we get into Revelation, you'll see too. The whole spirit world thing is upside down, big time. All kinds of weird, evil things are going to be going on. Perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. Oh, we got the elect again. That's us. You know who the elect are? In fact, I think I might even have a verse for it. Those whose names are written in the book of life. See, I have told you ahead of time. Just a minute. So if anyone tells you, so he says got so here in 26. So he said all of this, and now he connects back to that in 26. So, therefore, if you will, if anyone tells you there he is out in the wilderness, do not go out. Or here he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. This is sage advice for any new believer in particular, even today. When these crackpots are in the subways and saying, I'm the Messiah, follow me, or this Russian guy, Christ says, don't believe any of them. Ever, ever, ever. Never. Because when he comes back, there's going to be zero doubt. So it doesn't matter. These people, I know the number of days and all of this nonsense. For as lightning that comes from the east is visible even in the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Now, we live in an age today where that could very well be the case. Now, back when I was a youngster, I used to try to imagine how that would happen. Christ would be in Jerusalem, but the glow would be so bright, the northern lights kind of effect on everybody else, and you'd know he was there, kind of thing. But today we live in a world, in how can this happen? How could this take place today now? Christ could come back and the whole world would know it in an instant. Yeah. Well, that too. Everybody's taking his picture. But I mean, we cover cruise missiles going into a building. You don't think when the eastern sky separates and all of the saved and all of Christ's angels are headed right to earth, you don't think we're going to pick that up on something? And instantly, Fox News, CNN, name your Al Jazeera, whatever. Wow. And that's what he's telling us, is that when he comes back, there's going to be zero doubt. Then he says, wherever the carcass is, the vultures will gather. Immediately after the stress of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from the sky, and heavenly bodies will be shaken. All right. What did we learn about the stars falling from the sky? So, Brittany, if you read much end time prophecy, stars fall all the time in prophecy. One star, small star, it's like 50 times bigger than the earth, I think, something like that. One star falls on us, we're toast. Here we have stars, plural, falling. What do the stars mean? Yeah, can you read that, Lonnie? Oh, he's got to find it first? Oh, he only says star. So these are heavenly beings. They're not physical stars. It's a symbol. In fact, you know what? I'll do you a favor before you leave. Give you this. And I think we have stars on it. Yeah. And then I list the scripture references, how you can tell that. So essentially, when Christ comes back, all of the evil stars that have followed Satan are booted out, fall to earth, whatever you want to call it. And now they're running around totally almost uncontrolled on the earth, doing all sorts of crazy things. I want to read you one other verse here in a second. We're going to have to stop. Stars fall from the sky, heavenly bodies will be shaken. Then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And this is what we're talking about. You can just vision, and as we read through the New Testament, the descriptions of Christ coming back, his angelic army, we're going to read in a second. He gathers the elect. Remember, we underscored it. He gathers the elect from the four corners of heaven. They come back. This is going to be a real, in space, a real observable event. And it's going to disturb the natural order of things, physics, all of that. He's going to split the sky and come in with the army, and they will. It's an angelic army that will be seen, and we're going to be with the angelic army. Although, as we've read already and will later, Christ defeats all of them. It's incredible. Then will appear the sign, and all the people of the earth will mourn when they see the son. Peoples will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven. Can you imagine? Uh-oh. There really is. Uh-oh. Man coming in clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. It is going to be wonderful and enormous at the same time. Now, learn this lesson from the fig tree. And we talked about the fig tree last week, representing Israel. It represents Israel in judgment and Israel in prosperity. But now learn this from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at the door. Truly I tell you, this generation, when this begins to happen, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have. So he's telling them that the signs he's talking about, the abomination and all those things that follow, that's all going to happen quickly because it's in that 1290, whatever it is, that 3.5 year period. The generation's not going to pass away. It's just 3.5 years. It all happened very quickly. I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away. And then verse 35, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. Now, we're going to stop there because I want to share something else. And then we'll pick up Matthew 24 again next week. In Revelation, we're going to come across something that actually integrates well with today's lesson. The abomination is put in place. People flee. I wouldn't call it a new gospel, but a different type of gospel message. Who puts that message out worldwide? Because he says, and this message, the one referenced right there in those verses, and this message will be preached to all the world. Who's going to do that? The church?
Jewish evangelists.
The Jewish evangelists. And so we're going to look for just a moment at Revelation 7, 3 and 4. Revelation 7, 3 and 4. Do not harm, this is a judgment angel speaking, do not harm the land or the sea or the trees. All of these are symbols, by the way. Until we put a seal on the foreheads of the servants of our God. Now, who's sealing their servants? Not these people. Who else is doing the sealing thing? The Antichrist. Abomination goes up, and the next thing, which again, it's not in Matthew, but we'll get to where it is. Abomination goes up, and then suddenly, if you don't have the seal of the Antichrist, the 666 sign of the mark of the beast and so on, if you don't have that, you're not going to be able to trade, you can't work, you can't, all these things. Meanwhile, here, God is sealing. And we put a seal on the foreheads of the servants of our God. So these are going to be set apart. We know the word holy means set apart. These are really going to be set apart. Now their own seal and everything. Then I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 from all the tribes of Israel. Anybody know a group that has taken the 144,000 a totally different way? Isn't that the Jehovah's Witness?
Mormons.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think it's Jehovah's Witness. There's only 144,000 going to get into heaven, and if you're not one of those, we're here to help you get sealed or something. I don't know. No. Talking to somebody this 2 days ago. Joe Smith, the Mormon founder, got kicked out of New York, and in fact, one of the headlines was "The moron is gone" or something. They called him a moron. Drove him out of New York with his crackpot religious ideas. Anybody know where he camped first, and then they eventually went to Salt Lake? You know where the first encampment was for quite a while after they left New York? Indianapolis. And that's in Indiana. Yeah, the one I remember is Indianapolis, but Illinois probably as well. But there's a thing in there. When Christ comes back, he's coming back to Indianapolis. That's where he's going to step down. You probably sing that the Jim Neighbors song, "Back Home Again in India." That's all right. Anyway, Jesus isn't doing any of that stuff. Yeah, 144,000. And when we start reading that in Revelation, it'll say they sing a new song. And that new song is what we've been looking at this morning. That you not only have to accept Christ, you have to stand firm. And it's a whole different gospel. The free grace thing that we get criticized today isn't going to get criticized back then, because you're actually sacrificing yourself by standing up and saying, Christ is my Savior. Yeah, 144,000 Jews, 12,000 from each tribe, will go worldwide. And of course, we already have the communications capability to have the gospel preached worldwide anyway. What will the 144,000, what will happen to them? They go to, do they end up in heaven? Do they get their own church? Do they have 12 virgins each stay with them in heaven? What happens to the 144,000? They're all martyred. They're all martyred. Every single one of them. Except for 2. And we've talked about that before, and here we'll talk about it again plenty of times. They're going to slaughter all 144,000 of them over this 3.5-year period. The last 3 days of what's called the Great Tribulation period, or the tribulation itself, the 7 years, 2 are going to be captured, hung, and put on display in Babylon, wherever the capital is. Or is it? Yeah, I don't think it's Jerusalem. It's where the capital, Babylon or something, I think. I'll have to look that part up. Anyway, it doesn't matter because the whole world sees it. The whole world sees all this now. But the whole world sees the 2 of them hung in the square in public. Not that we haven't seen that kind of execution before ourselves. But they're going to hang in public, and they're going to hang there for 3 days. Anybody remember what happens during the 3 days? I bet he does. There's a big party. Worldwide. People give gifts to each other. They have block parties. There's party. Big celebration. That's it. The Christians are all gone. Those evil people are, we've taken care of that. Peace will now reign. And at the end of the 3rd day, those 2 hanging there come to life. Suddenly the party's over. And following that then is the return of Christ, and so on and so on. Crazy. And then there's debates about the final 2 are Moses and Elijah, Enoch and Elijah. Pick your final 2. We'll talk about that a lot when we get to it. But all of this, the disciples knew. Now, they didn't know the New Testament, but everything Christ is talking about, we've already seen in the Old Testament, plus a lot more. The Old Testament tells us how the promised land will get allocated out to the 12 tribes, and Jerusalem gets elevated up, and the land becomes lush, and just all these other things. So here's the disciples now. We're going to end here for today. We'll pick it up tomorrow, up on Mount of Olives, envisioning all of that happening. When will these things happen? Oh boy, we're ready. Come on, we want you to be king so we can sit beside you on the throne, and all of that. So we have to watch that we don't get like the disciples. We need to understand, and the reason we need to understand it, it's in God's word. He wouldn't have put it in there if he didn't want us to know. We have to understand it, and then we have to use that to strengthen our faith, to keep our feet shod in the gospel, and not be blown around with the wind with every little disease that comes out, every little war, every whatever it is. Those aren't the signs of Christ returning. And we're going to focus on looking at the signs of Christ returning. Apostasy and compromise in the church. Same thing with the nation of Israel. Those are the things that you keep your eye on. Not all this other stuff. Pestilence, they're all horrible. We should care for those people. But that doesn't mean the world's coming to an end. There's going to be lots more earthquakes, famines, wars, diseases, all of that. Don't let it fool you, because it will. That's how all these false prophets and messiahs get influence. All right, let's go ahead and we'll close with a word of prayer.